Right, while we're got a couple people starting, um, and, couple people starting while we're waiting for everyone to get online. I'm gonna share my screen for a second here. I'll share my here. Just wanted to share. There's actually I was invited to be a judge at a hackathon in the next couple of weeks. I can't find that one at the moment, but I just wanted to show you what hackathons look like. And here, for example, is one in San Francisco. It's sponsored by ACM, like the San Francisco State University. And so if you notice here, it's got tracks, right? And AI track, hardware track, sustainability, best design, and first time hack. So this is like the categories or the themes that they have. And I'll probably have more detail on it. And then city life, challenge track encourage you to find innovative ways to tackle issues faced by everyday urban communities like here in San Francisco. Topics include transportation, housing, offices, restaurants, and so on. Any project that attempts a challenge act will automatically receive a slight increase in the judging category. So it's always good to, if they give incentives for particular tracks, that's always good. So what is a hackathon? I think we've already know that in this time they're giving 24 hours to get together on a task. No prior experience. Yes, you can do this. No, you don't have to know comp sci, but people can learn or work with others. Work with myself or teams. Is there a theme? Yes, there is a theme. Don't know if they have that set up yet. How do you prepare? You know, kind of there's being familiar with tools, data sets, and stuff like that. And so there isn't much else about the hackathon, and usually that's it. And that's why I wanted to take you through this, because that's about as much information as you get a hackathon. But you already know, once they get the theme, you know what you need to do, and how to approach hackathons. So I just wanted to give you an example of what a hackathon might look like. Let me see. The other one is, I think it's called Hard Hack. Let me see. So UCSD is having Hard Hack. This one might be hardware based.
吃，而且喜欢吃一家辣。
日本汉
Video. All right, everybody on Zoom, how's everybody doing today? Nobody's on Zoom? All right. I'm on Zoom, folks. Any questions from Zoom?
No.
Okay, thanks. All right. So, what was I gonna say? So this week is what? Week 5, and we got what to do. Case study to do. All right. So everybody's good on that so far? Everybody's tracking with their group and everything's going good? Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right. All right, good. The other thing is, let me see. The type justifications, I graded those for the most part. Everybody was good to go. Again, when it comes to type justification, it's simply a paragraph and a title. I don't need the 4 or 5 pages of the first, a little too much. All right. I'm just trying to see where your head is at. You can say that stuff for later, but we kind of go from there. But for future reference, if someone asks for something specific, you want to stick to that specific thing. All right. But there's a reason why they're asking for it, because they don't want to be bogged down with other things, because it's not that time, right? And so just be aware of that. I didn't take any points off of that, but just be cognizant of that. Not everybody just, necessarily accepting of that particular approach of two, more is good. All right. All right. Aside from that, let me see, there's nothing else. All right, so this week we're going to do forecasting, or talk about forecasting, all right? And so forecasting is one of those, critical components of manufacturing and business in general, right? Trying to understand, what the demand is going to be, right? Because that's an important part of how we figure out, okay, how do we plan everything else, right? How do we schedule the staff? How do we schedule or allocate our resources as far as money, time? What moves do we need to make based on the forecast, right? And so forecasts can be, it can be difficult at times, right? Because the variables are so dynamic and they're so robust that you may have a particular variable that's very static at one point, and the next thing you know, it's just like for whatever reason, it becomes a really big deal and unpredictable, right? Such as the pandemic, that came out of nowhere, right? And so a lot of people were forecasting prior to the pandemic, and the pandemic kind of threw all their numbers off. But by that point, it was too late, because they're in the midst of production or whatever they're doing, right? And so that's one aspect of it, all right? The other aspect of it is that when you come down to forecasting and trying to understand, the buyer's, behavior, right? Understanding the market, understanding society, understanding some of the cultural phenomena that are going on, right? And thinking about, okay, how much do I really think, or how far do I really think this particular thing is gonna go, right? Whatever it is, it may be, let's just say, cryptocurrency or something to that effect, right? Or something that's popular right now. And you start to think as a company, like, we do this, but do we really want to do this, right? Because it's not an easy feat to just allocate resources a year out for something that's going on right now. You may have already missed the boat. All right. And so you don't want to get caught up in the frenzy of, oh, we're missing out on this money. We're missing out on all this opportunity, because we're behind the 8 ball, right? Because we didn't see this coming, right? Or we forecasted for it, and it didn't pan out the way we thought it was going to pan out. A la, Zoom, a la Peloton, a lot of companies that base their forecasting during the pandemic on pandemic numbers, okay? Which was the wrong thing to do. Although we didn't really know how long the pandemic was gonna last, we knew eventually we are gonna have to come out of it, all right? And so people were gonna get back to their normal routine, and some of the things that we did during the pandemic we would never do, not never, but we wouldn't do it at that rate, at that frequency, right? And so a lot of companies have found themselves in a little bit of a mix right now where they're trying to figure out what I do with this surplus inventory, right? What I do with all these commercial buildings, right? Which is a big deal right now. Commercial real estate is having a really, really hard time because of the pandemic, a lot of companies, let people work from home, remote work, and they haven't really gone back to the office. And so most companies, if you don't have to have the employees there, they not really pushing too hard. They are, but they aren't, all right? They're kind of giving people time to kind of transition back into the normal workflow. But the landscape of how we work is changing also in the sense that, not only remote work, but in the sense that, the amount of days we work, the amount of hours we work, all right? Where we work, all right? How we work, okay? And so some of the things that are tasks that you would do on a regular basis, now you can pull up ChatGPT, you can pull up other resources that will do it for you, all right? And you save some time on the back end that you normally wouldn't have because you were doing this stuff yourself, right? But when it comes down to forecasting, it's really understanding what's going on in the marketplace as compared to what our resources are and what we do, right? What is our goal? What's our mission in life, right? And do or should we jump into this arena, okay? So a perfect example, not perfect, but an example, for instance, we know former President Trump, all right, he's running again, okay? So in the past 3 months, what has what is one of the things he's done that's like been talked about in the news from a manufacturing business standpoint, not from a legal standpoint, not from his legalities. Nothing.
He sold those sneakers,
Sold the sneakers, right?
and he's that company, right, that also had like a merger.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And he did something else too, just last week.
When I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but he was willing to sell Bible as
He's
well.
selling
right?
Bibles as well. Okay? Exactly, yeah. Selling Bibles, he's selling sneakers, gold sneakers. I don't know if you've seen them. The gold Trump sneakers. All right. And of course he had the merger with his social media company, Truth Social, that is worth the estimated $8 billion, but just bought it $4 million in revenue and $58 million in losses. So I don't know how they got that evaluation, but either way, when you look at that, right, and the things that he's doing, right, part of that is him forecasting somewhat what it's going to cost him for the election, right? He's trying to figure out how much money do I have to really spend, right? Again, taking into consideration now his legalities, right, and the things he has that he owes, right? He owes about over $500 million in fines and fees and just stuff, right? $500 million that he owes to either government or to a person that he lost, a case to, civil suit to. So he's got a lot of expenses that he's got to account for. But he's also got to think about, okay, what is the landscape going to look like in November, right? Because that's really the most important part, right? When election time hits, what am I going to do? What's it going to look like, right? And so all these things that he's doing right now, they're all sort of like helping him forecast first thing how much money he's gonna have, right, in order to contribute to the campaign, right, and also to contribute to his financial woes. But also, what is the pulse of his base, right? Because what he can tell from the sales is how much are people really involved, how much are people really willing to spend and commit to Donald Trump, right? That shows a level of how deep they are into supporting him, right? If that makes sense, right? Because if people go out and the sneakers cost $350, right, and he's got a limited edition, I think he made like 1,000 pairs or something like that. I can't remember how many it is that he's supposed to make 1,000 pairs. They haven't gone out yet. But either way, he's just trying to get a gauge of, okay, what is the commitment level to the folks out there that say they're Trump folks? Okay, and you can tell that by the amount of sales he has going on in each of these particular things. The Bible thing, that's a little iffy, a little weird, a little strange, but that's the way he thinks about things, right? And so each one of these things give him an avenue to kind of really project out, right? And so a lot of companies do that. They'll put things out as feelers, or they'll look from previous years to figure out how do we forecast properly, right? Yes, sir.
Can we also count as an example X, aka Twitter for that?
Say that again?
Like, can we count example X for the same forecasting methods? Because like Elon Musk.
You mean like Twitter?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because he invested like a $44 billion, and now the revenue of the company it goes down around like a 20 or 10 billion.
Yeah,
But he's changed the system, selling subscription
yeah.
under name of.
So how would you think that'd be a forecasting?
No, actually, I'm asking like, can we count as a forecasting or not? Because like your example with
Mm.
Trump, it looks a little bit like the same for me, but I don't know if it is or not.
No, I wouldn't call that necessary forecasting because Elon Musk is trying to do something different with the X, right? What Elon Musk is trying to do, he's trying to be kind of like the one-stop shop, trying to be the Amazon of digital media, I guess, or social media, sort of, right? And finance and banking. So Elon Musk's plan is to really take X and make it a one-stop shop for your banking, your shopping, your communication, all this other stuff. He has Starlink. I don't know if you're familiar with Starlink, which is his satellite dish thing that goes with SpaceX and all this other stuff, right? He's trying to put all those things together under the X so that the consumer has access to all of it. So basically, he's trying to compete with Amazon and somewhat of, he's gonna bring in retail eventually. But he's just trying to put it up together. So I don't necessarily know if that would serve as a forecasting tool. It might, because you get a gauge of how many people are, maybe the subscription piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my.
Yeah,
point,
maybe the
because
subscription
there
piece.
wasn't any subscription before as I know.
Right,
Then
yeah.
he made like,
Yeah.
some subscription for some amount of money.
Yeah, he might be using that to get an idea of people would be willing to pay a subscription, just like Netflix did, right? And Disney did the same thing, Disney Plus. Netflix, they did it gradually, just kind of one thing at a time, like, hey, you know what? We're gonna increase the price. They put out a notice first. And then after that, they bumped it up and gave you the kind of the rules, like, hey, if you have an account, that can only be for one person. Person needs to get their own account, because before that, you could share accounts on Netflix and they didn't care,
I
right?
think you can still share.
You can still share, I think, right now, but eventually you have to pay for it. Yeah, you have to pay, you're gonna have to pay for your own account. And I'm pretty sure they started already. Yeah, you gotta start your own account. And so, I think as a feeler, they put that out to kind of see, okay, what the response would be, because everyone expected that once they did that, the subscriptions will go down, right? And they haven't, they actually gone up. Right? And so, for them, doing that really kind of helped them forecast, okay, what the response will be, because they had positive results from their little beta test. And X, the reason I say it's hard to tell with X, because Elon Musk is so entrenched in the day-to-day with X.
And unpredictable.
Yeah, and he's unpredictable. He's not like the quiet C. Like, do you know who the CEO of Netflix is? No. You know who CEO of X is, though, right? And as a CEO, you should really be, seen, not heard, right? Yeah, you should be taking care of business and behind the scenes, and your people should be kind of upfront doing whatever. But with him, I think a lot of people, they take their frustrations out on him via not subscribing to X, not paying for the blue check mark, right? And saying, because he thought the celebrities would jump on board, they'd all pay for it, and half of them were like, nope, I don't think so. We're done with X, right? But you can see that some of them are paying for it, right? And I think eventually he's playing the long game. He knows they're gonna come back, right? Because X, Twitter is a really big platform, has a lot of subscribers, And it's just one of the biggest social media platforms there is. So he's just trying to revamp it. So yeah, it could be a good gauge at the end of the day, for forecasting, just trying to get an idea of whether people would be willing to pay, a certain amount of money, and then figuring out what that amount is, right? What's that threshold where people get to the point where they're like, no, I'm not gonna pay for Twitter. I'm good with Facebook or Snapchat or whatever else is out there. I don't know. Out there in the world. So, but it's not a bad example. I guess if you dig a little deeper into it, that I'm sure he's using some of that for forecasting.
As I know, also at the same time, I believe Facebook started Threads.
Yeah.
Same like a
Yeah.
Twitter, and it's free.
Yeah.
And like Elon decided to like this subscription like a platform right after they announced like a Threads, which I think it was a really big move because there was other competitor. It came as a free, and then he says, hey, you need to be like a subscriber for some amount of money.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about forecasting. You have the opportunity to kind of see what other people are doing, engage the market, and then from there try to figure out, okay, what do we realistically think we can, capture as far as the market, right? What do we need to do? And it's a little bit harder because we're not talking about a good here. We're talking about a service or, access to something, right? And so it's not really tangible, right? And it's also varied in the use, right? I don't know when you use it, how you use it, that kind of thing. Whereas if this is what I'm forecasting, I know once you buy one time, you're probably not going to come back for another 5 years. I got a good idea of what the revenue stream will be and what the demand will be on a regular basis based on the life of this, all right? But I can't do that necessarily with Twitter or X, all right? I don't know what the life span is. I don't know what the life cycle is on social media. I don't. I'm sure they do. I just don't know. I just can't really figure out how to wrap my head around that and trying to forecast, necessarily usage right now. Like you could do it off of, previous forecasts or previous, numbers, but he'd probably be off. Right, probably off a little bit, especially if there's a new platform in the space. If he continues with some of the stuff that he continues on, and then Elon Musk, with his unpredictability, he's very quick to shift money from one thing to the next. So he may be more interested in the SpaceX program and terraforming Mars and that kind of thing. And so who knows with him? But it definitely is a viable, you know, valuable thing to look at, the forecasting tool for him internally. All right. But when we talk about forecasting, we're really looking at, okay, what the market was, what it is, and what we think it's going to be. All right. And so taking those three components and coming up with something in the middle, right? It's kind of a compromise, it's a mix. Like, all right, we know what we did before. These were the circumstances. We know what's happening now. What do we think is going to happen in the future? And then taking into account, we know certain legislation is going down, right? So for instance, the California minimum wage just went up yesterday, right? Was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. Official, $20 an hour, right? And so the companies, in California, and the business in California, they had forecasted what their, projected costs would be based on knowing that in 2024, that they'd have to bump up to $20. So that was a few years ago. I remember this whole conversation and this whole gripe about, hey, we're gonna go out of business and all this other stuff, and that's not the case, right? They did the forecasting, and everything's fine. Okay, people are still in business. Walmart didn't go under, McDonald's didn't go under, nobody went under, right? And so that forecasting tool that they used, or the forecast that they had, was helpful in helping the company build up their capital so that they could absorb, this particular increase in minimum wage. At the same time, while they're doing that, they know it's coming. And so I think, they did it in pieces. They did it with the 15, then they went to 17, and then went to 20. But companies had the leeway to do that, right? Because they knew this was coming in 2015 or 2016. No, was it 2019 or something? They start talking about this or something like that, right? they had all them years, 2019 till now, to kind of put this thing in place, all right? You know, in 2021, we'll do a $2 raise. In 2024, we'll go all the way up to, you know, $20 or whatever the case may be. But they could break it up a lot easier, right? That's all based on forecasting, right? And able to look at, okay, what our revenues are gonna be, what do we project our cost is gonna be, and what do we project our profit is gonna be, what's gonna be our bottom line. And then once we get the bottom line, we can try to figure out how much of the bottom line do we want to sacrifice into giving raises, right? Into increasing the minimum wage, right? And so this is where the forecasting tool is helpful in understanding what's coming down the road and what we should expect later on down the line, and helping us also, you know, increase the minimum wage for the workforce, all right? Because it's not just an increase in minimum wage, it's also an increase in payroll tax, right? Because now I'm paying you more, I'm paying $20 an hour. That means I'm paying more in taxes, right? And so you got to think about those things, right? How is that going to affect the bottom line, right? What does that mean for me for tax implications, right? And also the way accounting works for businesses, they can put off writing stuff off for the next five years because they want to take that benefit, you know, in 5 or 6 years, because they know 5, 6 years we have a project coming up and we're going to need the tax benefit to kind of offset some of these increased profits we have coming in, or whatever the case may be. And so, you know, when you look at that and trying to figure out, okay, how does forecasting help organizations be better, right? It really is a useful tool in trying to understand the landscape, the whole big picture, and trying to make sure that we allocate the resources where they need to be, when they need to be, and how they need to be, okay? And so, again, the whole thing about forecasting is what's going to be in the future, right? But we have to use the past and the present to kind of determine what that is, right? And we do that all the time in our day-to-day lives, right? We look at what we used to do, we look at what's going on today, and then we determine like what's going to happen tomorrow, right? What do I have time for tomorrow based on what I got done today, or what I got done yesterday, or how did I do it last week, okay? And can I do it again the same way this week, or am I gonna have to adjust, or whatever the case may be, right? So before we get into the PowerPoint, I want to show you this quick video, and it's going to talk about qualitative and quantitative forecasting methods, and then I'm going to give you a brief, quick stats class, because forecasting, most, if not all of it, is statistics. Okay, just averages, central tendencies, standard deviation, median, you know, so it's correlation. So a lot of it, if you haven't had stats, it's just gonna sound like mumbo jumbo. So we're gonna talk about this real quick, and then I'll jump into some basic stat stuff, and then I'll roll into the rest of the PowerPoint, okay? All right, any questions? So real quick, because he's not gonna, he's gonna tell you the difference, all right? So, I think I said this before, but quantitative is what we call categorical data or categorical information. Basically, it's a description of, you know, something. Hat, red hat, blue, it's small, it's tall, right? Qualitative is more, I mean, qualitative is that. Quantitative is more numeric in nature, right? I'm 5'10", right? Quantitatively speaking, right? Qualitatively speaking, I'm average height. You see the difference, right? So describing me in two different ways, but saying the same thing. 5'10", average height, right? So that's the distinction between the two, quantitative and qualitative, just so you have an idea when they're speaking, what kind of approaches you should be, when you think about quantitative and qualitative approaches, what it is that you'd be looking for, right? More of, qualitative would be more of like opinions and words and that kind of thing, and descriptions, whereas quantitative would just be straight numbers, right? It's $500,000 net profit, all right? Then you can qualitatively say that, oh, that's a loss, or that's not really big. That's a very small revenue, or whatever, profit line, whatever the case may be. Those. All right. So that was just a little brief intro into, the forecast. Um, All right, so. Actually, jump into- All right, so there's three things I'm gonna show you real quick. Let's just go here. All right. Oh, it's back here. Okay, so there's three things we wanna really concern ourselves with that are the cornerstone of statistics, all right? So you got the average, right, which is also the mean, right? The arithmetic mean, that's the name that mathematicians and statisticians, and that's what we call the mean, right? It's the average at the end of the day. You got the standard deviation, all right, which is basically, standard deviation. It's the sum of the difference of the values as compared to the mean of the data set. I'll show it to you because I know verbally doesn't sound, I don't know what the heck sounds like, but it's basically, you look at each instance and you compare it to the mean, you look at the difference, you square it, and you divide it by n-1 or just n, depending on if it's a sample or population. So, but we're not gonna get too deep in that. But standard deviation, it's just basically the variance, right? The next thing that we would call the variance. Okay? Variance, standard deviation. So the variance is the true difference between the point in your data as compared to the average. Okay? And so what I mean by that is, let's just say we have this kind of data set here. Let's just say we got something like this. We got 5, 7, 12, 15, and 25, right? All right, so these are our data sets, okay? So the first thing is, how many values do we have within this data set? All right, so this is what we call our N, okay? Whenever you see the N, all it's asking for, how many values do you have within your data set, right? How many people were in your population? How many people in your sample? What's the sample size, right? That can be denoted by a lowercase n or capital N, right? But we won't get into the difference right now, okay? It's N, right? And so the first thing you would do with this is you find the average and then you find the standard deviation, okay? And then from there, you can do everything else that you need statistically with the data, right? But you have to have these two things, okay? If you don't have these two things, then you're kind of out of luck, right? You have to have at least one of them, right? The other one, sometimes you can assume, or there's different tests that you have when you don't have the other, or you assuming that you kind of know what it is, but you don't, you're not really sure. There's different tests for each one, right? But let's just say in a perfect scenario like it should be, you have your data set. The first thing is to figure out what the average is, right? And so if we were to get the average of this, everybody knows how to get the average, right? All right, anybody want to do me a favor? What's the average here?
64 divided by 5.
32.
64 divided by 5.
32. Oh, sorry, divide by, yeah.
Okay. And what is that? That's, well, not perfect, that's okay. Was it? 12.8. Okay, so 12.8 is my mean, okay, or my average, all right? And so now, once I have the average, I can go and get the standard deviation, right? But really to explain what's going on with standard deviation, you're really getting the variance first when you do the standard deviation. It's kind of inherent in the process. So now that I know that my mean is 12.8, right? What happens is, and this is not what actually goes on as far as you doing the math. This is what theoretically is behind the concept, all right? So the 12.8, you would basically compare the 12.8 to each one of these values. right? And get the difference, right? And we're dealing in absolute values. It doesn't matter if it's negative, positive, we're just dealing what the absolute value is between the difference between the two numbers, right? So between 12.8 and 5 is what? 6.7.2? No, no, it should be 6.2, right? No, am I right?
Five as well?
7.8.
7.8,
7.8, yeah, 7.8.
yeah,
Yeah, 7.8.
7.8.
All right, so that's 7.8, right? Because 12.8 minus 5, right? 12.8 from 7,
5.8.
5.8, right? 12.8 from 12.8, from that, from 15, 2.2, and then from 25, from 25. 2,
12.2.
12.2? Okay, 12.2, okay. All right, and so what happens is, you take all of these, and you add them up. Okay? So, this, plus this, plus this, plus this, okay? And then you divide it again by 5. Okay? So, 7.8 plus 5.8 is what, it gives us 12, 13.6, plus, 13.6 plus the 8 gives us 14.4, plus the 2.2 gives us 3.6, and then this gives us 28.8. All right? 28.8 divided by 5. And then that gives us what? 5.7, okay? So, the variance here is 5.7, okay? So, on average, there's a 5.7 difference between the mean and each one of the values in the data set. Okay, that's your variance, right? But to get the standard deviation, all right, all you would do is the variance squared. Okay, you take this and you square it, and that actually, can't remember. This is the part I always forget. When you don't use your stuff, you always forget. Yep. That's it. Okay. Yep. So what you would do is you would take the square root of this, and that would give you the standard deviation. Okay? So the square root of 5.7 is what? Anybody got a calculator? Okay. Okay. So when you get the standard deviation, all this is saying that the sum of the differences of the data set on average are 2.3 numbers apart from 12.8 from the mean, okay? And so the way you would see it is something like this, and this is where something like that. And this is what we call a bell curve, a normal distribution. Okay. All right. So this is a normal distribution, and so with the normal distribution concept, all right, a central tendency. On average, we have some things that fall into here, 4 things that fall here, but most things fall into here. Okay. So this is our average, right? No matter what it is, right? Average height, average weight, whatever average it is, okay? This over here is our below average. This over here is our above average, right? So let's just say our average height is 5'10", okay? If we are one standard deviation All right, because this is all standard deviation down here, -1, -2, 1, and 2, right? They're all this number here. And I got my average height of 5'10", okay? And I'm saying I'm one standard deviation away, all right, from the mean, okay? So what you would do is you would take 2.3 and you would subtract it from 5'10". And that would give you this next number here. All right, because the one standard deviation is 2.3, we just calculated that. Okay, same thing on the other side. One standard deviation above the norm or above the mean will be 2.5, 10 plus 2.3. So sometimes what you'll see is in sampling, right, you'll see this, plus or minus 50. Or plus or minus 5%. Okay, that's our error, that's our variance. Okay, we're saying that, look, on average, our height could go anywhere from whatever, to, let's just say, I'm just rounding out to 2. 2, that gives 3, 1 here, let's just say 3 here, that's 7, and that's 9. Okay, so on average, right, if we are staying within our normal distribution, our height can go from 1 to 9, whatever feet, okay? That's what we're saying, that's our range, right? With a standard deviation of 2.3. So we understand that anything that falls really, kind of in here, within 2 standard deviations, this is what we consider normal, right? Normal operations. Nothing special happening. We know exactly what's going on. We know all the inputs that are happening to have our output. When you start falling in here, right, past the 2 standard deviations, this is when you start to have a concern. From any standpoint, operations, whether it be abnormalities in I don't know, as a dentist, somebody may have, 35 teeth or something, right? That's not normal, that's not average, but just because it's not average doesn't mean that it's abnormal necessarily, right? It's just that they're out of the range, but they're still within the acceptable range, all right? So I wouldn't have a concern about, you may not have a concern about that. You'd be like, well, you got 35 teeth, but 4 of them are wisdom teeth, right? Or whatever, or they're extra wisdom teeth. Do we need to pull them? No, they're fine, right? They're okay, right? Or maybe somebody had, like, I saw something the other day, I haven't seen it before, but that disease where you have like all the teeth in their mouth. Yeah, they got like hundreds of teeth, right? And so what this does, it helps you figure out, as from an operation standpoint, am I operating within the normal range? Because once it goes outside of my normal range, once it goes into these things we call tails, I know I'm operating either below my average or above my average. But I need to know why. Because I'm expecting it to operate here. Okay?
Why do you pick 2 standard deviations? Is that kind of?
That's the normal, that's the template, right? So 2 standard deviations is what is considered normal for anything, right? So, for example, they did a study with Lance Armstrong. And everybody familiar with Lance Armstrong, the cyclist, right? And they did a study on his heart to figure out, okay, why is he so good at, winning the Tour de France, aside from the drugs, right? And come to find out, his heartbeat is like 2 standard deviations below the normal heartbeat. His body has the ability to slow all his oxygen use down to where he's so efficient, but it's not like anybody else. His heart is a little bigger than most people, and he has the capacity to, his oxygen is to maximize it, right? But he, is not average. He's here somewhere, right? He's above that, go ahead.
So it doesn't matter like if it's like below or above the average, so either side is not expected, right?
Right, either side not expected.
The another thing is like, even if it's like, let's say below the average, it's still not a bad thing. As I
No,
understand.
it's still not a bad thing. It-
Or, something negative.
Right, it's still, no, it's not something that, it's just telling you what it is, right? It's just saying, hey, this is below average, or this is above average.
Lance Armstrong case, it looks like it's something beneficial for him.
Yes, absolutely, right? His heartbeat is below average, right? He beats at, I don't know, I think he said he's almost dead.
Okay, but for the businesses,
Mhm.
is it something, I mean, if they like anything below the average, it calls something like a beneficial as well, like the
It
example
could
or
be,
not?
it could be, if that's what they plan. That's the whole key. Because what this does, this allows you to say, you know what? On average, we're supposed to make, you know, we're supposed to make 100 widgets on the low end, 500 widgets on the high end. All right? And this is our average, right? But let's just say we make 95 one day. The foreman may panic. He may be like, why, okay, why did we only make 95? We need to figure out why, right? So this is the stuff what we call statistically significant, right? Because we want to know what caused this to happen, because we are expecting this normal operations. We're expecting 100 to 500. If it hits 101, okay, well, the machine might have went down, whatever, I don't know, something, it is what it is. But if it goes below 100 or goes above 500, we want to know what made that happen, because there could be something wrong in the process. Because we cannot predict, right, what's going on. Here, we know exactly what's going on, right? When it hits here and here, I have no idea, because that's not the way I set it up, right? And so having a gauge and understanding of what my mean is, or my average is in the standard deviation, gives me an idea, okay, am I within my normal, parameters? Or is there something going on? Why is it that we made 600 units today? Right? I wanna know, you know why? Because whatever we were doing today, I need to replicate that. Okay? Let's think of it like a team, sort of, right? A sports team. One night, they go out and score 100 points. They do that for weeks, right? 100 points, 100 points. That starts to become their identity, right? And this is all, again, gambling is probably the best way to illustrate this, right? When they do odds and they do over, under, and they do all these, gambling things where they say, hey, do you think the score is gonna be this high or this low, whatever the case may be, or who do you think is gonna win?
Sports betting.
Yes, that's all it is. It's all statistics, right? And determining what is the range, right? If I know the team normally scores between 100 and 120 points, right? Me as the guy or gal or Caesar's Palace, whoever MGM, I'm gonna, be like, okay, well, I will pay you $100 if they go below here, and I'll pay you $100 if they go above here, all right? Because I know on average, they're gonna fall right here, right?
And that's why they give like a low, percentage of the average, and if it goes below or above average, you can make more money.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So
Well,
It's
yeah,
unexpected.
yeah, the underdog is typically higher payout, right? Because again, I don't expect them to win, I expect them to lose, right? And so if you understand anything about betting, if you see a positive and you see a number, they're the underdogs. Okay? If you see a negative in the number, they're the favorite. Okay? The negative is always the favorite, right? And all this is, and depending on what it is, if this is the money line, as they call it, right? So, and it goes off $100. So for me to win $100, and I bet on the winners or people I think are gonna win, I would need to bet $180 to win $100. If I bet on the people I think are gonna win. All right? So if you and I were in a contest and you were supposed to win, somebody put $100 on you, they would need to put $180, excuse me, to get $100 back. Everybody good on that, all right? But if you wanna bet on the people that you think are not gonna win, the lose, you think that the underdogs are gonna lose, if you bet $100, you're gonna make $180. Okay?
But how do you make the 80 extra?
What do you mean? Oh, that's just the way the odds are. So for every 100 you bet, you make 180.
Oh.
Yeah, and for every 180 you wanna win, for every 100 you wanna win, you have to bet 180. This is what it's telling you. So if you, for every 180, it takes more money to win here because they're supposed to do it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No one's gonna give you favorable odds on something that they know. It's like, oh, Mike Tyson's gonna fight your grandmother, right?
Jake Paul.
Or Jake Paul, right? Who you gonna bet on? Who's the favorite here? Mike Tyson, right? Mike Tyson's the favorite, right? And so Mike Tyson's odds are 180, but for you to win $100 off of Mike, you're gonna have to bet 180 if you want to win $100.
I think this is kind of weird because like, for example, in Europe, so the betting, so let's say the same example, Mike Tyson and grandma,
Yeah.
they usually like to give, something closer to like a one. Because like when you put $100, you can get 100, so it cannot be negative. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Huh.
So for example, let's say like the two soccer team are playing, Barcelona and Real Madrid, right? So if the Barcelona is a home team and if they're like a favorite, they said, okay, the Barcelona's rate is 1.20. And if you put 100, you will get 120. But Real Madrid's rate is 3 because nobody expect
Right.
to win for Real Madrid. And if you put 100, you can win 300.
Right. It's the same thing. Same thing. It's the same thing.
But
Because-
in any case, you can put just $100 to
Yeah.
win that amount. So
Right.
it
It's the
looks
same
like
thing. It's still the same because it's still 1 to 3, right? 1 to 3 either way. It doesn't matter. So the odds could be different. So I see what you're saying, right? So
yeah, but in this case, in your example, what I understand,
uh,
you can make money anyway, but you can have like a profit or loss.
yeah, you can make money either way, right? You're
On the
gonna
other side, there's a possibility that we cannot make money because if you put Real Madrid, it gives you 3, but if Barcelona won, you lost completely.
well, if you so think you still don't make money, right? So they just say it takes $180 to make $100. That means you have to bet more.
But there is still $20 in your pocket in that case.
No,
Oh no, you lost.
you lost.
Yeah, you lost. Because if it takes $180 for me to make 100, you have to bet 180 to win 100.
Okay, now.
So
Okay.
here if you bet 100, you win 180 because they're the underdogs.
Okay, now I understand.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? So, but the way they do it is based on the standard deviation and understanding what the normal range is, what the standard deviation is, and understanding, okay, what do I expect? And if something happens, so in the sense of a game, right? They just say, you bet on, I don't know what team Messi plays for anymore. I have no idea what it
LA Galaxy.
Yeah, exactly, right? And then this is why it's important, right? When the injury report comes out
Oh, sorry, exactly.
before, I know he's in Miami, whatever, doing whatever he's doing, right?
It's Beckham, David Beckham's team.
Yeah, and the injury report is an important thing because people will bet based on the injury report. If Messi's not playing, what are the chances the team is gonna win? Right? It's important to bettors, right? And so I need to know that because the odds will change based on that. Right? And so it's the same thing with operation. If I know that a certain resource is not gonna come in, I'm not gonna have access to something, or something's gonna change down the line, or I see that we did more than we normally do, right? I wanna know why, because I wanna replicate that formula, right? I wanna know, like, how do I get it consistent? This is something that all businesses use, McDonald's, Burger King, to keep consistency, right? To maintain the quality and to maintain the same rate of production, sort of, right? So that if they fall out these ranges, then they start to get concerned as to, okay, why is this happening, right? Is the machine break? Was somebody sick? We have a lot of sick people. Did one of the resources as far as supply didn't come in, right? Not getting resupplied or not getting the resources you need at a company like Tesla or McDonald's is a big deal because that puts them behind the production, right? And you hear a lot of companies say we couldn't meet the demand. It's normally because supply issues, and because they have supply issues, they can't produce at the same rate, right? Because they have a range, right? They know what to do, but they're expecting it between this and this, and then boom, it goes to this. So then now they have to figure out, okay, how do we make that up, or what do we need to fix? Or we need to adjust our forecast. Right, and you see that in companies' earnings per share, right? Whenever that comes out, that's always a big deal. Like we forecasted $2 or 30 cents per share, right? And the forecast 30 cents, but it came out at 25 cents per share, or even 29 cents per share. That's 1 cent we were off. Stock normally tumbles. Okay, because you couldn't predict, you couldn't forecast properly what the earnings per share were going to be, right? We expected this and we got this, or the earnings per share were higher than what we expected, stock goes up, because that tells me as a stock purchaser, like your company is doing well, right? The company's operating and you are able to beat expectations, right? And so you get all that from this little stuff, right? But this is the basis of statistics. Mean and standard deviation, right? And it's the basis of forecasting, operations management, production management, specifically quality control. All these particular statistical analysis tools, this is what they're about, all right? And so I just wanted to make sure you had a little bit of understanding, right? And seeing it because as we start to go through the PowerPoint, there's just a lot of stat stuff that they're assuming that that if you haven't taken stats in a while, you're not gonna know the mean error and standard error, the mean, and all this other stuff. And the correlation will come in later, because then we start to look at what they call causal relationships. What we'll talk about, right? We look at things that affect kind of what the relations are like, right? So when we talk about correlation or causal forecasting, we look at some of the things that contribute to the outcome, right? And how they're related. So I just got done doing what they call a hackathon, right? Everybody familiar with hackathons? No, it's not kind of like a geeked out open source AI machine learning coding, thing, right? So there's a problem or the theme, and then everybody, they give you the data set, and you kind of go in and, you look at the data set, and you build your own code around it based on what it is you're trying to do, right, to the code, right? And seeing if you can be innovative with it and come up with some different solutions. And one of the techniques that you use, a lot in data analysis is correlation or regression. And so that's a causal analysis. What I'm looking at is what factors or what features were there that caused a particular outcome to happen, and can I connect them, and can I tell you how much each particular feature contributed to the outcome, right? So as an example, if Dr. Vasquez, the president of the school, right? She comes and she says, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And I go outside, all right? And I come back in and I got a bloody nose. What are you gonna think? You might think she punched me, right? Or she hit me, right? But because you didn't see it, you don't know, right? But your assumption is that me going outside and her punching me caused my nose to bleed, right? That's a causal relationship. But causal relationships are very much, you have to see them to really be able to say, yes, that A caused B to happen. Just because they're related doesn't mean that they're causal, right? Just because two things have a good relationship don't mean that they can predict each other's outcome, right? So some famous relationships that we have are height and shoe size, right? I can tell how tall you are by your shoe size, right? It's something that's been proven over and over again for the most part, right? I can tell how long your dimensions are because it's something that has a causal relationship, right? I think your torso is your wingspan is twice as long as your torso, or some nonsense like that. There's a formula for it. I can't remember what it is, but it's scientifically through research proven that this is a causal relationship. We know that there's a causal relationship between smoking and birth defects, right? Or drinking and, cirrhosis of the liver, or smoking and lung cancer, right? There's kind of if you do this, that's probably gonna happen, right? To what degree, we don't know because everybody's different in their makeup, right? But I can tell you, if I do the analysis, that 50%, we're gonna count that to you smoking. 20% we're gonna count that to you drinking. The other 10% is no physical activity. So that we've accounted right there for about 80% of why you have lung cancer or why you have cancer in general. All right. The other 20%, we don't know. Genetic could be anything, right? Could be anything. But that 80%, we know for sure, like, hey, this is what it is. Okay, we can account for it. And so that gives a way in which to minimize and mitigate the outcome. Right? Because now I can tell you, hey, stop drinking, go to the gym, cut back on your smoking. Okay? And then we'll see what happens with everything else. Because we really don't know. All right. And so this whole concept is used in forecasting and operations management and throughout businesses in order to forecast, right? And understanding again what the demand signal is based on the consumer buying behavior, right? All right. I know that was probably a whole lot in a little bit of time, but just so I can give you a little bit of background, okay? All right. Move on here. Anybody got any questions? Any comments? No? Okay, good. All right. So, like I said before, when we talk about forecasting, we're really talking about, what we think demand will be, what it should be, and then the difference is, what it is actually, okay? All right. And again, forecasting is done everywhere, be it marketing, finance, operations, doesn't matter. Like I said, we forecast in our day-to-day lives as to, how much money do I think I'm gonna make this month? If you're an hourly worker, right, in our salary, how much money am I gonna make? Or how much do I think I'm gonna get on my tax returns, right? Based on what I made last year or this year and I'm filing, right? So forecasting is a very relevant thing. We just don't necessarily think of it in business terms, right? In operation management or production management on a regular basis, right? But again, used in different capacities, right? Capacity planning, inventory management, supply distribution. It's basically used in many, many different areas within the company or organization in order to make sure that we meet the demand at the end of the day, but we don't waste our resources, okay? If I know that we're not gonna have a high demand for something, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and cut certain things. And like we talked about before, you see how certain restaurants, even after the pandemic, they only open at 5 and they close at 9. And they only open Tuesday through Thursday, or they open Thursday through Saturday, right? Because they've done their homework, they've looked at, previous forecasts, they look at what's going on, and they determine, like, it doesn't make any sense for us to open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday because there's no business. No one's coming in on those days, all right? Or it's not that no one's coming in, it's just not worth turning the lights on if we're gonna make $500 and it's costing me $1,000 to stay open, right? That doesn't make any sense. So let's go to Thursday, Friday. We know when that kind of starts the weekend off, we're gonna have more foot traffic, we're gonna have more people coming in. We can also tell by the reservation numbers, whether or not we should be trying to, open and kind of, what should we have as far as supplies, right? When restaurants do specials, right? They have a certain amount of specials, right? If they're doing a duck or something, king crab or something like that, they have a certain amount of servings. But that's based on the reservations, that's based on how many people they average or normally get into the restaurant, right? They look at the price point of the particular special that they're selling, and then look at the average ticket of the restaurant, right? And figure out, okay, how many people do we think are gonna jump into this price point? Who's willing to spend $100 for this, surf and turf, right? If our average ticket is $75, do we need to go ahead and drop the special to maybe $80 or $85? So it's not too far ahead, right? This is where the standard deviation comes in, where, okay, if our average ticket is 75, what's the plus or minus? Well, it ranges from anywhere from $50 to $200. Okay, so we could probably stick that in there for, let's just say $100, $110, right? Because you also got to think about the tip. You got to think about all those things as additives to the bill that someone is willing to shell out for dinner, right? Special or not. And so that tells me, okay, well, we're only gonna have 25 of these specials. And when they're gone, they're gone. Because we don't want the extra inventory. Because we can't, we're basically gonna have to sell it the next day because it's gonna go bad, right? Or it's not gonna taste like it's supposed to taste. So that's why restaurants are very slim margins, right? Because there's a lot of waste in the restaurant business, right? They don't make a lot of money. In most places, they make their money off what? What do most restaurants make their money off? Alcohol. Right? It's alcohol. Right? And again, I look at that individual bottle and I know how many pours I should be getting. And if I have between this and this range of pours, I'm good. But the minute it falls below this range, I got a problem. We're supposed to get 20 pours, we got 15. You're over pouring. Bring it back. Or we're supposed to get 20 pours, you got 25. Good job. Right? Now the customers may not be happy because now it's affecting the quality of the drink, right? And so now you may have an increase in your efficiency when it comes to the product itself, but the customer satisfaction will go down, the quality will go down, which inherently will affect your sales because less people start coming in because now they notice that, hey, it used to be this, and then now it's kind of like this. All right, it used to be really good drinks. You could taste alcohol, it was good. But I think they're like skipping on the alcohol. You can tell. And so people be like, let's go someplace else, right? Where I know that they do the drinks a certain way, right? They're consistent, right? And that's what most companies are looking for. Look for consistency, right? And so, but when you look for consistency, it really has to do with forecasting and understanding, the things that go into that. All right, so some of the methods when you're talking about forecasting and depending on what it is that you're trying to forecast, okay? Long-range marketing programs, qualitative, pricing decision, time series. And when we talk about time series, we're just talking about over a period of time, okay? As a function of time, what's it look like? So the more time you have, the better your data, the better your analysis, right? Because you're going to collect more data over that time. And so again, the more data you have, the deeper, the richer your analysis can be, right? Especially when you talk about qualitative research, right? Because I want to be able to collect opinions or kind of talk to people and garner their thoughts, right? And see, okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about that, right? Quantitatively, it works also, but quantitative is just very, it gives you a very surface level understanding of what's going on because they're just numbers, right? On a scale of 1 to 5, you get a 4. But what does that really mean? All right. But quantitatively, what does that mean? Oh, drinks were good, but they weren't as strong as I like them to be. There was too much ice in it. It didn't come in the right glass. You understand? So you get more data, you get more information when you do a qualitative analysis versus a quantitative analysis, right? But again, depending on how your questionnaire structured or your Delphi method or whatever the case may be structured, you get different stuff. But time series is basically looking over something over time, period of time. Causal and time series, right? Like I said, if you can find the causes for certain outcomes and how things pan out, that's also, desirable, right? Because what causal relationships do, they help you build models, okay? And so when you see a hurricane model or tsunami model or earthquake model, those are causal relationships, right? Even crop or agriculture, those are all causal relationships. I know that we only had half an inch of rain this year. What is that gonna do to the wine crops? What is that gonna do to avocado crops in Mexico? All right, and all that stuff matters because, again, if I know how much rain we have and I can understand the production that's gonna happen with the particular crop, I need to put it out there. I need to forecast properly. Once I forecast properly, that will determine the price. Because again, if there's an average or I know what exactly what's gonna come and it's the same pretty consistent number, then the prices stay consistent. But if I know that we're not gonna produce as much, you know the price is gonna go up. Because the demand is still there, the demand didn't increase or decrease, but the supply decreased. All right, but that's based on the fact that I know that we didn't have enough rain, right? Or we had too much rain, for instance, right? Sometimes too much rain is not good, right? And so again, to help me my forecasting method and saying, look, or in Florida, when they have frost, and the oranges get frostbit or whatever they frozen, frost freeze, whatever they call it, right? They know that the orange production is going to be less, or they know that they have to harvest it a bit sooner, right? And bring them in and then let them mature via some artificial means, right? Via some other light source or whatever the case may be, and then they'll pull them. So this is kind of like, the whole farmer's almanac and that kind of thing, right? Old school stuff that they used when it came to agriculture about the sunrise, the sunset, the temperature, the phases of the moon, all that stuff is important to farmers because they need to understand the environmental factors that are going to affect their crops, right? Infestation of bugs, right? When they said invasive animals are coming in, and you hear like they had an article the other day, yesterday, about Californians putting some legislation together, putting a bill together. They want to kill. I can't remember what it was. They want to kill. What was the number? It was a large number. It's two species of owl. One is more evasive than the other. One is basically eating the other one, sort of. They want to kill the invasive one to protect the other species, right? But when the people that, the ASPCA and environmentalists, when they look at it, go, well, do we really want to do that? Do we want to manually determine like we're going to extinct or take these owls out, right? Instead of just letting nature do what it does. There might be a reason why they're evasive, right? If they're not necessarily impacting us in a human way, right? Then why should we interfere with all that, right? And this is something that's in Congress, right? It's a bill that's going on right now for people that, to be honest, people in Congress are elected, but they don't know everything, right? We may want to think that they're experts, but they don't know anything because there's so many things going on in Congress.
Didn't they do that and go on with the snakes?
With the brown
Right.
snakes, yeah, with the brown snake. And then as soon as they got rid of all the brown snakes, guess what? They had a rat mouse infestation that they couldn't control. Guess what? Let's repopulate brown snakes again. I remember when I went to Guam and I was in my room and you would see the brown snake crawl through the windows. They'd be all over the place. Like you just
You
did.
kill them, you had to put them in a box.
Yeah, you had to put them in a box and you couldn't do anything. You couldn't do
Didn't
anything.
they kill all the birds?
Yeah,
That's
they killed,
it.
yeah.
They're killing all the birds, so they controlled it with the mice.
Mice,
and
yep.
then the mice went rampant and snakes.
Snakes, yeah.
Balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, I heard like a couple days ago, I met with someone and they told me that SoCal has a kind of special program for 4 years long to make it more rainy the weather.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
sure,
I mean,
yeah. This
so-
seeding, they call it seeding the clouds.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true or not, but
No, it's true.
technically what they say, the same San Diego's weather is mostly sunny, not too much rain,
Yeah.
but last couple of years was too rainy and winters are cold. And I said I don't know if it's true or not, but according to a person, it also caused some problems for vineyards or
Yeah.
as you said, crops, because
Mhm.
when you do something good for some certain things and it can harm for other things as well at the same time.
Right, yeah.
So
It has second and third order effects. And
using these methods can be helpful for some certain things, but definitely it could be harmful for other things maybe.
yeah, at the end of the day, you gotta follow the money. Whichever one's gonna have the least financial impact for a company or for individual is where they're gonna go, right? Whichever way they can maximize the dollar That's the way they're gonna go. And seeding is something, cloud seeding is something that they've been doing for, I don't know how long, for a while now. They literally will seed the cloud and make it rain.
So that's basically like acid rain.
Yeah,
Like how they
yeah.
do in
basically, yeah.
Dubai and
Yep,
maybe.
yep. So they've been doing it for a while, but again, it's an artificial way in creating water, right? That isn't necessarily within the ecosystem and the natural progression of the environment of Mother Nature that, you know.
Actually, your example, I think is fantastic because like if we check, use this all the averages, this like methods, forecasting, the numbers or the qualitative like approach show us to like do something, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like for the whole example, like
Yeah.
it cause something bad, but yeah, maybe like the forecasting or the numbers on everything says that, okay, we have to do this.
Right.
But like in nature or in long term or in life,
Right.
it could be something bad, so.
Yeah, that's why we have that, that's why the whole, you know, global warming, climate control argument now, you know, some people believe in global warming, other people would think it's a lot of nonsense, all right? But we can see something's happening, something's changing. Now, whether or not it's due to human intervention or it's supposed to happen, no one really knows,
I
right?
think like statistics or all these
Right.
approaches are not always the best solution.
No, there's just some things, it doesn't matter how much analysis you do, you're just never gonna know. I don't care how much how much data you collect, you're never gonna know where God is, you know, or what heaven is like. It's just not what hell is like. There's nothing we can do about that, right? What's going on in space, right? We don't even know what goes on in the ocean.
We don't even know Antarctica.
Exactly. We don't even know Antarctica. Exactly. We don't, you know? And so it helps and it gives us an idea, gives us a generalization, right? An ability to kind of say, we think this is what it is based on maybe 80% of the things that we looked at. We've done experiments, right? In a controlled environment. And so we say these things result in this particular outcome, but we don't really know what's going on out in the natural state of the world, right? What goes on in the Amazon, when we're not looking, when we don't know everything. And so you kind of have to go with, you know, what you find and kind of, you know, do your best to do the analysis, but at the end of the day, it's gonna happen. Whatever it is gonna happen. But when it comes down to manufacturing and businesses, right, they try to use all these different particular forecasting methods in order to try to come up with a decent idea of, you know, kind of what the outcome's gonna be, right?
We're gonna kill 500,000 cows.
Half there, yeah, it was some crazy number. It was ridiculous, yeah. I was like, wow, that is nuts. Yep, it's crazy to save another species. And I was like, that is a wild number. And I was like, that is a huge impact. And why, like, if it's happening, it's probably happening because it's supposed to happen.
And the question is like, how can they decide to take something's life first of all? I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And
That's
but
another-
yeah, but that's when the argument's against it. It's like, look, you know, you can't go around just killing animals because they're killing the other animals. That's probably the cycle of life, right?
It's nature.
Yeah, it's nature, right? We don't play with lions because lions eat us.
Actually, I was watching one show. It was showing like lions were like fighting with like antelopes. They were like
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to like feed
Mhm.
themselves on kids. And when I was watching, I said like there was so many like people were like watching like recording like maybe TV like a show people. So, but I was telling them I thought like why don't you like stop them like the poor thing is like eaten from the lion, but. Then I remember, okay, there is like a balance in the nature.
Yeah.
They have to feed their like baby lions and everything.
Exactly.
So
They gotta eat too.
we should not touch anything in nature. So.
No, should not be messing with nature. Leave nature alone. Nature's gonna do what nature does.
It's like how the food chain.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. The food chain, right?
Ecosystem.
Ecosystem, exactly. All right. All right. So when we talk about qualitative forecasting methods, really, it's about, you know, getting contextual data. Really talking about, you know, getting, you know, collecting information from the standpoint of what your opinion is, right? What are your thoughts? I like it, I don't like it, it needs this, it needs that, right? That's a deeper, more, a richer set of data, because then what happens is when you do qualitative research, is that you start to collect everybody's opinion, and then what you're looking for are things we call buckets, right? Or even trends, right? I'm trying to see what commonality do you have amongst the answers. And so as I start to see these buckets start forming about certain answers, then I can start formulating my general idea about this particular topic goes from this data set, right? I did a study on why parents feed their kids McDonald's when they know McDonald's is not good for them, for their kids, right? And then, one of the most obvious answer was like, hey, it's convenient, right? Second was it's cheap. No, it used to be cheap. Third is it affords me more time to spend with my kids and my family invites me cooking and that kind of thing, right? And so those were the buckets, right? And so when I summarized my findings, I said, hey, on average, more people feed their kids McDonald's, although they know it's not good because it's cheaper, it's convenient, and it affords them more time. And like, oh, okay. So now you have a sentiment. You kind of have an idea, okay, why people do it and what are the drivers behind why McDonald's is still successful, why McDonald's is still going on, why don't people go, just go to the store and buy stuff and cook themselves, right? All those questions. And so you get a deeper understanding of what's going on, right? And so let me see if they even talk about, no, okay. All right. So some of the major methods they use here, all right, that you're pretty familiar with. Market surveys, everybody gets those. Life cycles analogy, same thing. It's kind of like talking about from cradle to grave type thing, like, hey, a car starts here as far as like the raw material, and then it goes here to manufacturing, and it goes here, and then at some point the car ends up at the junkyard, and then it becomes scrap metal, and then it goes through, gets recycled, and goes through some stuff, right? Informed judgment is basically me gathering information from you after you've gotten all the information that you can get, right? Sort of like in the military, we always say, well, in the Marine Corps anyway, we don't wait for all the info. If I got 70% or what I think is 70%, I make a decision. Because you're never going to get all the information. Never, okay? You're never going to get all the intel. You get 70%, 80%, that's high, that's great, all right? So I make an informed judgment based on that, right? The technique that's used pretty readily and is all over the place is the Delphi technique, right? And they mentioned in the video. And the Delphi technique really is the opinion of experts, right? We call them subject matter experts, SMEs, whatever the case may be. And we get them in a room or we get them together and we say, look, this is the issue at hand, right? Give us your expert opinion, right? Give us your thoughts on these particular questions, right? And because they're experts in the field, they study the field, what they're telling us should be more detailed, should have more context, should be, a little more in depth, right? It's kind of like me asking Christina about, dentistry, like what goes on with the dentist, what's the difference between an orthodontist and a periodontist, like, that kind of thing, which I still don't know, but like those kind of questions, right? If I had a question like that, I would ask her, and then I say, hey, can you bring a group of dentists in? And I got a bunch of questions I need to ask, and I want to get a real deep answer, really good answers and good data, because I'm going to make a decision based off of that about maybe opening up a dental clinic somewhere, all right? Because there's an underserved market, but I need to know why that market is underserved, right? There may be a reason why we don't go over there because they don't take a certain type of insurance, right? So we stay over here. Or they may not, the insurance may be too high to set up facilities there, so we set up here. Or there's not enough, like, there's always a shortage of doctors, apparently, when I know that that's something that's controlled by the medical schools, by the, American Medical or whatever, association. They control that. They control how many doctors get pumped out, how many nurses get pumped out, how many dentists get pumped out to society, right? And so that helps us forecast how many doctors we project to see, right? In the particular field and out there in the world for people to use, right? But I want to get an expert opinion on that because I may want to increase the number of applicants that are let into the medical program or get into residency, which is one of the harder parts of, once you're done with school, you gotta still get resident. And I didn't realize that residency was like a competition. I thought you just, you got done with school and then you got into a residency program. Like, no, you have to apply, they gotta take you, and you can get kicked out of residency. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds a little complicated, all right? It sounds like a whole nother bunch of school and nonsense, right? But understanding that, right, and understanding that, look, I need to get expert opinions. This is where the DEFI technique comes in, right? When you are lacking naive data, right? When you don't have anything to go on, no historical data, no nothing, you kind of have to go to the experts to kind of get an idea of a quick understanding of what's going on, right? At a very high level so that you can make the right decision because you're in a time crunch, right? Or you're not even in a time crunch, you just don't have the resources and don't have the availability of the old data or what happened in the past to make a decision off of that. All right, so time series analytics, all right, so again, things I want you to focus on is, okay, the level, which is the average, okay, that's always gonna be your baseline, okay? That's what we just calculated up here. Okay? The average is always your baseline. You always have to compute the average because I need to know my starting point, right? The average is always 0, right? As a, so let me go back to the bell curve. So there's 3 things that you'll find on the bell curve on your distribution, all right? Yeah. You'll find the standard deviation, which is these numbers, right? You will find the raw score, okay? And what I mean by the raw score is the actual values that we had up here. And we had 5, 10, 15, 20, right? And we got the average. 0 represents the average, which was 2.3, whatever it was, right? That's the raw score, okay? So if I ask you for the actual value, right, that's what it would be. And I know the standard deviation was, let's just say the standard deviation is always 1, okay? It's always 1. So I know the standard deviation is 1. So what I'm looking for is, what is my range if I look at 1 standard deviation? If it's 1, then it'll be 1.3, and it'll be 3.3, right? At 1 standard deviation, right? The negative only denotes direction. It tells me either it's positive or negative as far as it's going one way or the other, right? It's below average or above average. If it's negative, it's below. If it's not, it's above, okay? So you have an understanding of, okay, my range is 1.3 to 3.3, right? That's your raw data. And then you have something where you have the percentage, okay? So okay, so in a normal distribution, or we call central tendency, 95% of the population in general, doesn't matter what it is, we're all the same. Okay? We're all the same. We are all, generally speaking, average male is 5'10". Average female is 5'4", 5'5" now, I think, all right?
Countrywide.
Yeah, depends on countrywide, right? But yeah, each one's specific, but, in general, 5'10" is what we're gonna go with just the States, but it's different in, India, China, wherever you go, right? Europe, Germany, they're like 6'8", average size, right? Pretty good. Yes. How you doing? No worries. So it's like the magic door is closed. We need to see what's inside. Let's just open it and see what's inside. And so 95% of us fall into the average bracket. Okay? So let's just say, I'm gonna use basketball because it's easy for me. I like basketball, all right? We all know Michael Jordan. Okay? Michael Jordan is not average, right? Probably arguably the greatest player to ever play, right? Michael Jordan is over here. Okay? I'm over here. Now, actually, I'm over here. If we talk about NBA, right? We talk about NBA guys, right? An NBA guy, I'm somewhere way over here somewhere. I'm not even on the street, okay? But let's just say, all right? And then somewhere in between here is everybody else. Most people, right? Most people might be average ball players, okay? Give and take, right? They're athletic, they can shoot the ball, they can run, they can play defense, whatever the case may be, right? So again, these are the people I'm worried about. I'm concerned about. I'm not worried about the folks in here because they're average. Everybody's like that. I don't care, right? I want to know what makes Michael Jordan above average. Michael, what did you do when you were growing up? What did you eat? Right? There's a story about Michael Jordan because his dad is 5'8", his mom's 5'5", I think. Michael Jordan is 6'6", 6'7", give or take, right? And where'd you get the height from? Right? And he tells this funny story about how when he was younger, he used to hang upside down because he heard that if you hang upside down, it makes you taller, it stretches your bones and the blood rushes down and all this. So he used to hang upside down and stretch himself to get taller, right? And so he got 6'6", right? But that's not true. Yeah, no. His dad, his grandfather was tall. Okay? But nonetheless, whatever, right? So that's his story. He's sticking to it, right? But you know how many people went out and hung themselves upside down? A lot.
Millions.
Millions of people went outside and hung themselves upside down, right? Now, you say, why is that important? Because if you remember, what was Nike's whole thing with Michael Jordan? Anybody remember? Well, Michael Jordan was big they had all the commercials, Gatorade, Nike, had all the commercials. What was the thing about Mike? Be like Mike, right? Be like Mike, okay? And so this is something that they would, talk about, like, you want to be like Mike, you have to do A, B, C, D. Guess what you also have to do? You gotta buy our sneakers. Because Mike wears these sneakers, it might be the sneakers, who knows, right? So this is how they play all this stuff in, right? And say, okay, we need to find out why Mike is over here, right? We also need to find out why Dr. K's is over here, so we can stay away from that. Okay, we don't want none of Dr. K's talents, right? We want Michael Jordan talent, right? Because what's gonna happen is all these people, everybody to this side, is trying to get over here to Mike. Okay? And all that means is money for Nike, Gatorade, whatever other commercial, Hanes, Fruit of the Loom, whatever commercial Mike is doing nowadays, all right? Michael had, a bunch of endorsements that he's never gonna have to work again, ever, right? Billionaire, okay? But it's all off understanding that people wanna be like Mike, but you have to tell people, what did Mike do? Okay? Mike trains like crazy. Mike spends, just use LeBron for instance, right? Because LeBron's in this category here with Mike, right? Kobe, right? Right? LeBron spends $1 million on his body, on his physical fitness a year, documented, like trainers, dietitians, all these specialists, all these different techniques when he does the blood enrichment platelet thing, Kobe did it, oxygen deprivation, all this other stuff, right? He spends $1 million a year. It's part of his budget. Okay? Now we can't do that. I don't have $1 million to spend on anything.
I think even if we can, we will never like that.
You never be like that, right? But that's not the point. Right? Because guess what? You know who else uses this information aside from operations? Marketing. And we're gonna market just like crazy. Because you think you could be like Mike. Right? You think, right? But it all depends on the context. I could be like Mike if I'm playing a bunch of kindergarten, or maybe even up to, I don't know, 8th grade, maybe. Nowadays, the high school kids will destroy you, right? They're like going straight to the NBA, right? But if I'm playing with a bunch of people that can't play, I look like Mike. right? But if I'm playing with people that are on the same level as me, I look like Dr. Case. Okay? And so all this is just a big kind of circle, right? But at the end of the day, you have to understand the average. Okay, that's really the core of it all. What time is it? All right, keep going or break. All right. Push through. Taking too long. I knew this would take forever. I don't like the fact they don't. This should really come right after stats. All right, so you got your level, right? And then what you're trying to figure out is, you know, when you look at the demand and time, right? You got your trends, your seasonality function, your cycle function, and your random error, right? And so your level is your base, right? You understand, like, this is my average, okay? And then from there, I look at my random error, which is my variance or my standard deviation, right? I look at the trend and try to figure out, okay, which way is the market going, right? And is it going with my levels or is it going against my levels, right? Seasonality really speaks to, you know, how that particular product is bought and sold, and then the cycle is going to have as far as like, okay, you know, when it first comes out, it's pretty low demand, but as it goes on, the demand increases or whatever the case may be, right, over time, right? The life cycle of a product. And so you look at all these particular things and you try to figure out, okay, as a function of time, how do all these things work out, right? We know that, especially for seasonality things, right? We know that time is critical. Thanksgiving, Easter, Valentine, you know, Christmas, all of those seasonal holidays, which means certain things for the producers, right? Certain things for companies. And so they're gonna look at the demand based on seasonality, right? And figure out, okay, how early do we need to start producing goods and services for next holiday, right? Or even like when you go on vacation. Most people, when they're gonna go on a big vacation during the holidays, they plan that the year, like they're literally on vacation that Christmas and they're planning for next Christmas, all right, already, because they understand that as it gets closer to that particular season, guess what goes up? Demand and price. Okay, so I want to buy when the demand is low, the price is low. Okay, but I need to understand that. Same thing with companies. They buy when demand is low and prices are low. Because they know as it gets closer to the season, guess what? They're gonna need more fuel. So why would I wait till November to buy fuel for December? I'm gonna buy it in January or February, right? When Christmas is over or Thanksgiving is over, right? And they do Black Friday, and even after Black Friday, they have all these other sales going on, right? I personally don't buy anything during the holiday. I wait till after the holiday. Because you know what? The demand has just dropped significantly for that thing that I wanted, that everybody's scrambling, was standing in line for because they wanted to get it for Christmas. I don't mind getting it a couple of days after Christmas at a reasonable discount. You know, and companies understand that. And so all this, when you look at time series, is taken into consideration, excuse me. Now, snowboarding is an example, right? We know that, hey, no snow, people don't go to the ski lodges, they don't go to the resorts to ski, right? That's why they make snow. Right? But snowing and fake snow and real snow is a huge difference, not the same, right? All right, so I'm gonna explain the concept, we're not gonna go through the formulas, because it's really no point, okay? So we have the simple moving average, which we kind of got already, we did that, right? And we have the weighted moving average, or what we call, you know, sort of, we're smoothing, right? So the only difference between the simple moving average and the weighted average is that we give each of the values a weight based on whatever it is we think is important, right? So usually it's based on recency bias, or just recency or relevancy. So let's just say that when you look at your grades, right? A LE is worth a certain amount of points as compared to the quiz, as compared to your final paper. They all have different weights, right? And so we take that particular weight that we give it. The paper is, 30% of your grade, right? So if you don't do it, you'll fail, okay? And so that gets a weight, right? And so once we know what the weights are, right, we can kind of figure out, okay, what the average is gonna be, what the moving average is gonna be, right? And this is all a function of time again, right? We're looking at this as a function of time, right? As time goes on and elapses, how is the wave or how is the cycle moving? All right, just an example here. All right. All right. Again, time series data, right? You got your demand data, your 3-period moving average, okay? So that means they're looking 3 periods, whatever that 3-period is. 3-period, it could be, their period could be 3 months. They could be every quarter, right? So we're looking at 3 quarters. So basically, 9 months, right? And so this is the 3-period moving average as compared to the 6-period moving average, right? And so what's the difference that you notice between the 3-period moving average and the 6-period moving average? The green dotted line and the brown dotted line. What's the difference in the two that you notice?
Put down all the time, is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, it goes down, but like,
So the demand goes down and time goes on.
okay, it does, but like if you compare the two, right? What sticks out, if anything? Does anything stick out to you guys?
And it's more gaps, like,
Okay, it has more gaps, right? All right. You notice that the 3-period moving average has more gaps and dips, right? And is further away, right, from the demand signal, sort of, right? Demand signal doing all this, right? But you notice that it's going peaks here, and it drops here, and it goes here, and it drops all the way down, it goes here, and it drops here. But notice that the green, the 6-period moving average, is a little more consistent along this 20 line, right? Whereas this, the mass signal it goes from 10 to 30. The 6-period moving average is more along the 20, right? So what happens is, as time goes on, it becomes more stable. It averages out, right? You heard the term, call it dollar cost averaging, right? So when you dollar cost average, you want to buy low, and you want to buy volume, you want to buy as much as you can, so you can bring down the unit price. Okay, so it's the same thing here. As time goes on, we get a more consistent, reliable understanding of what the average is over the 6-month period because we have more data, right? And it has more time to kind of adjust itself.
can I just use the rest?
To adjust itself as compared to the 3-period moving average, where it's a smaller period of time, and it's more, there's more variance in it, right? This is where the variance and standard deviation come in, right? There's more variance in it. It kind of bobbles all over the place, and it has a wide range where this is pretty steady. I can tell where it's going. It's just a benefit of having more data over the longer period of time, okay? Yeah, as far as smooth as number of periods and moving average increase, okay? So you just get it's just the whole concept of being able to, spread the data over a larger period of time and then being balance out and get the average moving back, okay? Constant, that's the alpha, and the alpha is basically it could be your error, the amount of error you're willing to let go, absorb, sort of, right? And so the alpha, and you'll get this, well, if you guys get your PhD. Well, no, actually, if you do it, you guys don't do a dissertation. I mean, not that there's a thesis there, huh? No, okay. So if you were doing a thesis and you were doing statistical analysis for your thesis or your dissertation, you would need to use your alpha of 0.05 or below, okay? So you remember here, when I told you that 95% of us are average, but 2.5% on the higher end, 2.5% on the lower end, right? So what you do is all this adds to 100, right? But because I'm only concerned really with the tails, right? So if I add those two tails together, that's 5%, right? Because that encompasses the entire bell curve, okay? And so what happens is that 5% converts to 0.05, right? Because if you want to change it to a decimal, okay? Because when in stats, we don't use percentages, we use float, we use decimals, okay? The only thing is percentages because it's easier for people to understand that aren't really concerned with math or really care about math. People have, 5%, I get that. Same thing, 0.05, right? But this is what we call the alpha, okay? So that's saying that, hey, if it's 0.05 or below, then I'm concerned. I want to know why, because that represents these two sides. Okay? Now, it's a little hard to understand in the because we don't have any real data. You can't really see what I'm talking about as far as the alpha, but because we have real numbers to crunch, and I crunch the data and my alpha is 0.05, that means that if it's above 0.05, that means it fell in here. And I don't care. There's nothing to see, nothing to investigate, nothing to analyze because it's supposed to happen. God, who knows, whatever the case may be. But if it's below 0.0, if it's 0.05 below, that means something is happening that is deliberate, that we need to figure out what it is, right? And so there's 0.05, there's 0.01, and there's 0.001, okay? The lower the alpha, the more stringent the stronger your belief in the data, in that there is something going on, okay? For researchers, 0.05 is perfect, right? For pharmaceuticals, anything that has to do with medicine and people consuming stuff, usually 0.01 or 0.001. Because we want to be absolutely sure that we know that, hey, what these effects, this outcome is, and we know what the cause of this outcome is, we want to be sure that we know that to a very high degree. So this basically equates to 95% here. Come on in. Come on, come on. We're about to wrap it up. Come on, man. 95% here, okay? What is it? 0.9, and this one is 0.001. So this one is 0.99 or something like that. I can't remember. But the lower it is, right, as far as the number goes, the more confidence you have in the results being statistically significant and that you have to look for something, right? Or it's a good spot or it's a good thing to analyze and take a look at, trying to figure out, okay, what are we doing, right? All right, what my point is. All right, so exponential smoothing, right? Again, it's just assigning weights when we do exponential smoothing as compared to just regular simple moving average, right? We assign a weight to certain things based on time, right? So for the stock market, this is a big deal, right? You have a simple moving average and we have an exponential moving average, right? SMA and EMA. And SMA is something that, you'll see, and you go, okay, on average, the stock is, whatever, $500, okay? But then if we had some exponential smoothing, or we're looking at exponential moving average, what it takes into consideration is what was the last thing that happened that's relevant to this stock price, okay? Oh, the earnings report just came out. We need to give that some weight to figure out, okay, where's the stock price going, right? And so you'll see that SMA and the EMA, they'll kind of move in different directions, right? And what you're looking for sometimes is a convergence, right? Of them meeting. Once they meet at the same place or wherever they intersect, that usually indicates that it's going to do something, right? Or once they start to diverge, right? That means something is kind of happening and you don't want to buy or sell anything during that point, okay? Because there's too much variance going on. I don't know what's going on in the market. It could be anything. Donald Trump said this and then boom. It's like everybody with Dogecoin, right? That's Elon Musk coin. Anytime Elon Musk says something about Dogecoin, it goes up, right? When he doesn't say anything, kind of drops down, all right?
Hold more.
Right, and so the moving average is one way, but the exponential moving average is different. And once those things start to converge, then it's like, okay, where they gonna converge at? Because that's the point, like, okay, that's gonna be a good bar code. But when they start to diverge and it starts to separate more, it's like, something is going on, and you don't want to do anything. You know, and that goes across the board for any stocks and stock analysis across the board, all right? So exponential smoothing is just that. You're just assigning a weight based on time. All right. Let's get this right now. So here, when you said alpha 0.2, your alpha could be anything. As long as between 0 and 1. Doesn't matter. You set your alpha when you are doing your own research, okay? But as an accepted threshold, 0.05 is accepted as being, okay, you did good research. We have some confidence in that particular outcome, okay? All right, so we go back here again, time series data. Again, as we look at the time periods, right? This is the, what was this again? This, 6 month, that was the 3 month, right? The alpha here is 0.3, the alpha here is 0.1, right? You notice that we're a little more, stringent down here, right? Because we have a tighter line, right? We have a better understanding of how the average is going, right? And also, but up here we have an alpha of 0.3 because there's a lot of variance in there. And so we're not really sure as to, okay, like what's necessarily causing it, but we understand that over a period of time in the 3 month time period, the alpha is 0.3. And we need to know, okay, that we have a, 70%, confidence in our data and what's gonna happen, right? We understand. We have a 90% confidence in this because you can see it's pretty relatively consistent, all right? So the alpha is not gonna be as high. All right. All right. So one thing really stick out is the outliers, all right? An outlier is anything that falls outside the parameters of the average or the confidence interval or the range, right? And so let's just say for our classroom, the average age goes from 18 to 75, right? Anyone that is 16, 17 or 87, 88 are considered outliers because they don't fall within the range of our average. Okay, our minimum and our maximum based on the average. And so when you see an outlier, all right, you should annotate it and you should take note of it, but you don't want to take it out of your data set because there's a reason why it's there. And you may take it out and do the analysis without it and do the analysis with it. So you can compare the two and see how much of a difference it makes. Usually depending on what it is, it won't, it won't kill your data either way, but it's important that you highlight it and let people know like, hey, these are the outliers. So they understand that, they understand which piece of information to take because outliers are important. If you look at the average or the mean as compared to the median, okay? If you watch the news and they talk about, polls and that kind of thing, they'll always say median. They'll never say mean or they'll never say average. Sometimes they'll say average because it's easier for people to understand, but the median is really probably the best approximation of the center, okay? Because the average is very susceptible to outliers. So let's just say everyone in this class here is 35, right? And we got an 80-year-old dude sitting right there. What do you think is gonna happen to our average age in the class?
I don't think he's gonna affect it, but he's an outlier in this case.
Right, yeah, and we're gonna include him.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't affect the average.
It does affect the average. Yeah, it will.
It does?
Yeah, it will. It won't affect the median.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah, it won't affect the median, but it will affect the average, right? Because the average is an actual arithmetic calculation. The median is not. So the median, all we're doing is saying this, all right? Think of the numbers 5, 7, 12, 13, 15, 20, and then 1, okay? In order to get the average here, we, add them all up, divide by 6, right? The median, the way we get that is we put them in chronological order. Yep, 1, 5, 7, 13, 15, and 20. And literally, the number that's in the middle is the median. Okay, so in this instance, we have 2 here, we have 2 here, and we have 2 in the middle, right? So when you have 2 in the middle, you take the average of the 2. So 7 plus 13 is 20, so 10, all right? So 10 is the median, okay? And that is a better representation of the data as compared to the average. Because if we did the average, because of the 1, even because of the 5 too, right? The average is gonna be, let's do the average. What's the average here? 12, 26, what's it, 41, 61, 62 divided by 6 is what? What's 62 divided by 6? What's that?
11 something.
10 something?
10.3.
10.2. All right, so this instant, it's not too bad, right? We're not too bad, but there is a difference, okay? There's a difference. But the median is typically the better representation of the data set, right? And you'll see that when you are watching the news, pay attention. They'll do the median because the median is more, well, depending on how they report it. If you want the numbers in your favor and the average works out better for you, then you probably report the average. But if you're doing it, correctly, and you want to really be representative of the data set, you're probably gonna need the median because it's not
More
effective.
specific
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, for example, like when we look for a job for like, let's say software engineer,
Mhm.
they usually give like not average, like a median
Yeah,
income or
mhm.
median salary.
Right,
To
exactly.
show that like, oh, this is the entry
Right.
position and the median income is this for the
Right.
entry position.
Exactly.
And we can predict what
Right.
can we get.
Exactly.
salary, I think, instead of average, because the average, there are some people making millions and.
Right. And some be making 50,000. All right. So you can't say, oh, everybody's making $100,000. Why? Because that guy's making $1 million. I'm only making 50,000. All right. So there's a difference. All right. So it's not represented. So outliers are important depending on what you're looking at. All right. We're not gonna get into all this mean square error, dragon signal. Basically, these are all different variations of the mean and the standard deviation, but for different samples. So if I just have like, let's just say this number set, right? That's one sample. I can have another number set. That's another sample. I have another number set, another sample. So what I do is I get the average from each one, and then I take those, I take the average of those, the average of the averages. And then I get the standard deviation of the average of the averages. And that gives you the standard error of the mean. All right, and so that's basically all this stuff is that thing, right? The what you call it, the speed of light and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so don't worry about it too much. I'm pretty sure there's nothing you're gonna be using that for anytime soon. All right. Let's see here. We kind of talked about this earlier. All right, we talked about causal forecasting, right? But again, when we talk about causal forecasting, really looking at what are the things or the factors that contribute to a particular outcome, and can we build a relationship between the two, right? The first step is the correlation, right? Do they even have a relationship, right? Does, like I said, shoe size and height has a relationship, okay? But do I know that, what makes you a certain height, right? I can tell your height by your shoe size, but I can't tell you why it's that way, right? That's a whole different thing, right? I'm looking for the causal relationships to it, not the correlation, right? Yes, there's a relationship. How strong is that relationship? It's, 0.8. That's a pretty strong relationship, a pretty strong correlation. And so I know that with a high degree that if I get your shoe size, I'm pretty much going to assume I can tell how tall you're going to be. Whether you're going to be tall, short, kind of short, but I need the raw data to figure out the actual number, right? But if I have, a 0.4 correlation, or R, they call it, right? I know that that's a medium or okay correlation, and I probably would be like, I guess I could use it to try to determine the person's height, right, based on their shoe size. I know that there's some relationship, and so I could correlate the two. And be like, all right, it's not strong, but it's there, right? I know there's a relationship there, right? And so what we're trying to do is really trying to figure out, what are the factors that lead to the particular outcome, and can we connect them? When it rains, all right, more than likely you'll have less traffic out to restaurants, out in people doing stuff, less traffic, right? As far as depending on the time of day, of course, right? But that's a causal relationship, right? Between 4 and 7, traffic is high because people are leaving work
Or going to work.
or going to work, right? They're moving, right? That period of time is moving. So I know that traffic is caused by that movement, right? That's a causal relationship. A cause B, right? People leaving work, going to work, and going about their business in this time frame causes traffic, right? Or this accident causes traffic, right? That's a causal relationship per se. But just because I see a car on the side of the road and there's traffic, doesn't mean that car created the traffic. It just happens to be there, and it may or may not have contributed to the accident in traffic. All right. So once we get that kind of down pat and we figure out, okay, what some of the factors are, we want to build a model, right? Anybody familiar with this formula? Y equals mx plus b, or a plus b, or plus bx, excuse me, okay? Y hat, okay? So y hat is basically your outcome, okay? This is the formula for a line, okay? So you have your constant, you have your slope, and you have your x, whatever that number happens to be, right? And this is how we create models, right? We have our inputs and we have our outputs, our outcome, right? So we put in all our particular function, and we have a constant that we know is never going to change, right? Or we call the intercept, right? It's where the x and y cross, okay? And so when we look at the model, we say, okay, I know what I want it to be, but what is my constant? Okay, what's my baseline? What's my mean? What's my average? Right? So this is used a lot in, well, pretty much everything, but you could use it in the sense of salary per se, right? Base salary is 50,000, right? But you work off salary and commission, right? Because this is your salary, right? And your salary is a function of your base salary plus your commission. Okay? So if the base salary is 50,000, right? My commission is, I don't know, $5 for every $100 I bring in, right? Now I just need to know how many things I bought in.
That's the variable.
Yeah, that's the variable. And so that would help me determine my salary, okay? So pretty easy, straightforward formula once you sit down and play with it a little bit and get a good understanding of it, but it's basically the formula for a line. And you could have a bunch of, like, it goes all the way down. All these are just inputs into the model, right? So I have commission, I got overtime, I got, other incentive bonuses. All those things lead to my end salary, whatever the case may be, okay? But I know as a constant, doesn't matter what happens, I'm gonna make at least $50,000 because that's my base, okay? And then now I'm just trying to figure out, like, okay, like what my salary is gonna be based on what I've done for the year or done for the month, right? is basically the formula. If you're a car salesman and you wanna make $150,000 a year, your commission is 25,000 and you make, your base is 25,000 and you make, $1,000 every car you sell, how many cars do you need to sell to get to this $150,000 mark? Okay, and they just applied across the board to everybody, right? And so you build your models that way. And that's regression, and different ways to do regression. Regression, you can do stepwise, pairwise, likewise, there's a whole bunch of different regression approaches that you can do, but it depends on what it is you're trying to look at, how you're trying to look at it, how you're trying to account for it, either being time or where it comes in, right? Because sometimes it depends on where that input comes into the formula as to its effect on the formula, right? It's kind of like, if I have a headache, is me taking the medication after the headache is already there, is that gonna help me get rid of the headache? Do I need to take it before? Like, as soon as I feel it, I take the medication, then it'll work, right? But it could be where if I take it after, it may not work. So this kind of studies they do with it. They figure, okay, let's do a stepwise, all right? Step one, person feels a headache. Step two, they don't do anything about it. Step three, the headache is full blown. Step four, they take the medication. What's the outcome? Medication didn't work. All right, now let's put it before, like as soon as they get the headache, all right? Boom, get the headache, they take the medication, headache is gone, right? So it depends on where we put the medication, right? That's kind of a stepwise approach to regression. This is another causal model again. So here, intercept the slope, right? Again, the intercept is the constant, and the slope. Everybody understands slope, rise will run, right? As one rises, what does one do? Run. So if we look at something like this, right? X, Y, okay? This is our run, and this is our rise, okay? The change in X,
Intersection between 2 points.
yeah.
You can see that?
Yeah. No, not necessarily the intersection of 2 points, but
You need 2 points for the slope. Taking that,
yeah, you need 2 points. Yeah, you need 2
Yeah.
points, but
At least.
yeah, but the slope is the rise over the run, right?
Mhm.
So basically, whatever we're looking at as X runs or Y rises, what does X do? Okay, so if Y goes up 3, X goes over 2. Okay, so for every $100 you earn, or every $100 or every car you sell, you make $100. Okay, that's your slope, basically. Okay. All right. All right, so CPFR would be the last thing we're going to talk about. Really just a system or and it's just a way of looking at forecasting and trying to take everything into account. It's kind of like ERP, enterprise resource planning, sort of. All right. And really it's just trying to take all the different inputs, put them in the big pot and trying to see, okay, how do they affect each other? What's the variance on each one? Which parts or which supplier delivers on time? Which ones run over cost? Which ones are chronically always defective, right? Those kind of things. You kind of put them all together and you kind of look at, okay, based on that, this is our forecast, right? And then you kind of say, all right, when can we tweak this particular forecast? This particular supplier is always late. They have high defect rate. Can we get someone to replace them? Because if we can, then we have a more consistent supply source and we can, probably get some efficiencies in there. All right. All right. Any questions? I know it's a lot. A little bit of stats, a little bit of forecasting, a little bit of everything, but, should be okay. There shouldn't be too many mathematical things to really ponder, so. All right, group case study this week, get that knocked out, make sure you turn it in by Sunday, and then, I'll see you guys next week. Okay, all right. All right, Zoom, I'll see you guys next week.
Because, I mean, we're working before, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Let's check, I don't know.
See you later.